All right, down here in New South Wales, Ballamble, beautiful area. I'm here with Will Stolk, who's got some tremendous stories growing up, a professional snow skier. So good morning, Will. How are you?
I'm pretty fantastic. It's a nice day on the Gold Coast. We're just chilling here up in the crib on the funny farm out in the hills,
Mate,
in Ballamble.
It's beautiful. Like, I drove up here and seriously, you're driving up into heaven. When I got here, you showed me around quickly and you told me of some of the parties you've had. Let's get into some of those early parties and what you're doing.
Well, basically, we've got this big property up here since my parents moved up here probably about 12 years ago from Sydney, after having a few Mexican restaurants in down south of the border, down Mexico way. Even though we still live in New South Wales, we're not quite cane toads. Basically, we've got 54 acres up here. We've got a motocross track. We've got an Olympic trampoline in the ground. My dad's a little bit of a gypsy, so what we did was we found an old property up here and had a really kind of crazy kind of pool area. We noticed, a friend of my dad's noticed that a resort in Ballin On was closing down and they had a giant water slide that was in the back, and then we ended up buying that for $1,500, and then it sat on the big helipad at my house. We don't actually have a helicopter, but that's another story.
What a great thing to say that.
My dad was pretty notorious for starting a project but then not finishing it, and basically my mum nagged him, and then finally, just as an example, he ended up we had a big working bee, and we built the water slide, and it's 157 feet long. It's got a 500-litre tank, and it's pretty crazy.
Mate, you mentioned to me when I first walked in about you did a film clip for Bliss and Esso out here. Is that right?
Yeah, we filmed a music video out here for Bliss and Esso for a song that they did called Act Your Age.
Yep.
With Alan Hardy. I think you know him. A really lovely guy. Doing a lot of things with this creative agency, The Dreamers. They got pretty wild. There was about 300 plus people. They had a helicopter flying over the top of the pool area, midgets and all sorts of other celebrities and
so we
chaos.
we could see that film clip on YouTube or something.
You can see that film clip on YouTube. Yeah, I think it just got over 1 million views. I think just recently.
Wow, it's fantastic.
So that was a pretty wild, interesting couple of days.
Let's go back to when you were just a young kid. Obviously, skiing was a big passion of yours. Tell us about the early days on the mountain and what your progression and what your dreams were to become a professional skier.
Basically, when I was a little kid, my parents had a few Mexican restaurants, and they basically kind of made Mexican indirectly popular in Australia when I was really young. They were going to do a deal with CC's, actually.
The chips
to kind of do like a Old El Paso Mexican line before Old El Paso existed. So this would have been like the early 90s. And my dad is an entrepreneur. He's, a hustler from back in the day. Basically what happened was my grandmother, she had a heart murmur and she had some complications and a whole bunch of drama happened with this medical stuff, which I won't get into. Basically, she ended up dying and then a whole bunch of other stuff happened. After that, my dad was like, life's too short. I need to have fun with my family.
Absolutely.
And basically what he did was we moved to Verbier in Switzerland, where he used to live when he was younger as a ski bum. Basically, he left his 3 restaurants under the guidance of someone else that ended up ripping off a whole bunch of money. And basically he worked in a ski shop and he took myself, my 2 younger brothers and my sister and my mum, and we lived in Switzerland for 6 months. I slowly started to learn how to speak French, didn't go to school, just skied every day. Had long blonde hair and I was called the youngest ski bum in town, and pretty wild back in the day, the old man partying and pretty wild. And it was a really interesting experience. It was like kind of my first true experience of freedom. And Verbier has always been a pretty hardcore freeride mountain. It's one of the best, probably one of the top 5 ski resorts in the world. Had a big ski bum community. There was a guy that was a pro skier, from a Swiss pro skier named Dominic Perret, and he was famous for jumping out of helicopters, like the big old Chinook yellow-style Russian ones, and skiing, doing rocket skiing on his tails, like doing big straight lines. And I met him through one of my dad's friends, who's a very famous old-school action sports photographer named Mark Shapiro, one of the first guys.
Yeah.
I met him, and I remember meeting him in offshore in Verbier when I think I was just turned 10, and after that, all I wanted to do was be a professional skier.
Wow,
I was obsessed. basically, and that was the turning point of the life. And then after that, started skiing a little bit more. We did a few seasons. I started doing mogul skiing.
Maybe explain to people what mogul skiing if they're not familiar with it.
Mogul skiing is like bump skiing.
Yep.
I really wanted to go to the Olympics. My dream was to be the next Johnny Mosley. Johnny Mosley was the guy who won the 1998 Olympics in Nagano, and he did the 360 mute grab, and basically kind of put free skiing on the map. You know, free skiing's been one of the big, you know, it was one of the pioneer sports back in the 60s. Guys were doing front flips off 60-foot cliffs in the, 1963 in old Dick Barrymore movies. And basically surfing and skiing were the original action sports. And that whole hot dog culture through the 70s and 80s, Wayne Wong and Glenn Plake and the Scott Schmidt era and Blizzard of Oz and Greg Stump and then basically moguls and freestyle became really popular, and I was really into that. The old school BFA pants. And back in the day, when you were on the hill, you'd see other people with 1080s, which was like the first twin tip, and there was like a small culture. Everyone was a snowboarder, and you weren't allowed in the terrain parks. We used to get chased out. I remember getting chased out of the terrain park when I was about 11 by about 3 or 4 like snowboarders who are like my age now, like 25, 26. For riding the half pipe. And basically I did moguls for a few years. I was really into that. It was really cool. The culture was really small and everybody knew each other. And, all the old school guys like JP Auclair and JF Cusson, and they kind of revolutionized the sport, and it started becoming like snowboarding. Skiers started grabbing their skis, and it was a really cool time because it was really interesting to see a sport start. It was what kind of would have been like the early days of the Krusty movies, where they were pretty much inventing freestyle motocross,
Who were some of your early sponsors?
The first sponsor I ever had was Dinner Star when I was 13, I think it was.
Yeah, that's early. That's good.
Just a few, just pro form, just cheap skis.
Yep.
Basically, my parents said to me, we'll help you with your travel, but your skis and stuff like that. I used to work washing dishes and just doing odd little jobs like when I was a little kid, and they basically said, we'll help you with your travel, but you have to buy all your stuff. And so I wasn't that good, but I was really good I'm good at talking. So when I was a little kid, I was calling up, the marketing managers of all these big companies, just trying to hustle, trying to get free stuff, trying to building resumes. Yeah, it worked. I was always better at probably the hustle than the actual ski stuff, because I was always out partying or causing mischief.
That was a life though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been an interesting life, but it was really interesting back in the day to see an action sport start from scratch and see the progression of it. I remember JP Auclair and JF Cusson coming to Australia in 98, just after like free skiing blew up in the Olympics with Johnny Mosley and stuff like that. And I remember like so vividly just being just blown away by seeing those people hitting the same jumps that we were hitting and just doing, even just back then, 720s and backflip mute grabs and, like a D-spin 7 was like a massive trick. Like now guys are doing triple cork 1620s and with a double grab, and there's like 14-year-olds, 10-year-olds doing doubles, and the progression in 15 years has just been astronomical. But to be honest with you, guys were doing that with aerials in the 70s. Frank Bear built a backcountry kicker in 1983 and did a triple twisting quad backflip. So it's not really now they're just grabbing their ski. Yeah. So, it's funny how things come back around, if that makes sense. People have been crazy for years. Yep. It's like the same with the Krusty guys. Like there was guys back in the 60s and stuff on motorbikes that were probably just going out into the desert and just jumping massive stuff on those old beater bikes, But it's amazing how what the sports come to now with X Games and just all the videos. And
Did you go for X Games at any time?
I did a few X qualifiers. I got some top 10 results in some X qualifiers when I was younger for ski across. Yeah. But competitions weren't really that big of I was into them. Yeah. But I always like having fun with I never did that well on comp days. I started getting more into freeride comps. I podiumed a couple of times at New Zealand Nationals when I was a little kid. And did, a whole bunch did the heli challenge a couple of times. And
where was that at, mate?
That was in New Zealand, in Wanaka.
Yeah, tell us about that. That's a great event, hey? Rip Curl were throwing that back in the day, weren't they?
Rip Curl was one of the big sponsors back in the day, and that was my first pro comp when I was 15, and that was one of the first, really progressive competitions, and they had a backcountry freestyle day. They had a Chinese downhill day, which was really interesting, where everyone starts at the top and then kind of bombs in and first one to the bottom. And then they had the extreme day. And that was a really interesting experience, hanging out with all those older pros. That was kind of like the start of my mischief, kind of starting. Because I was hanging out with a lot of older people,
Sure.
who were like 25 to 30, whether I was like 15, 16.
Yeah.
And when you're a cocky little kid, you don't know any better. You're trying to stand up with the boys and, like show them that you're the man when really you're just a little SHIT.
Yeah, but look where your head is, mate, because obviously, you're dropping cliffs and going into shoots, and so were they. So you were on the same sort of wavelength, really?
Yeah, indirectly, yeah. And it was an interesting experience. I've certainly been through the grinder of life and had some interesting experiences from being a character that kind of break the kind of black sheep, kind of dance to the beat of your own drum.
Yeah.
But it's been an interesting ride, and I've had a lot of fun doing it.
You've had a bit of television coverage and media coverage.
Yeah,
Tell us a bit about some of your stuff.
I've been on a bunch of stuff for competitions and stuff like that. We filmed a pilot for a travel TV show for National Geographic Channel that didn't end up getting picked up because I didn't really get along with the producer. That's another story that I won't elaborate on.
Sure.
But yeah, just competitions, and I've been in a few movies, filming with a few different film crews and stuff like that. And I always enjoyed filming and more so shooting photos, because photos is like when you see a photo or a video part and you see it in a magazine, it's a pretty amazing experience because you're out there with your friends, you're creating a moment. It's like there's an art form to it. There's a lot of work that goes into getting a shot. It's like hiking for an hour just to be able to wading through chest deep pow and like getting up on a ridgeline and like clicking into your skis and being real careful and then, dropping in and then getting the shot. And when walking into a news agency and like opening a magazine and seeing a double page spread,
Wow.
I always got more satisfaction out of that than any kind of competition,
Yep.
So basically, I started competing on the World Qualifying Tour, did a few World Tour events, made finals a couple of times, had a couple of friends die in competitions. Big mountain is probably one of the gnarliest sports out there. It's not quite on the base jump level, but definitely on the big wave surf level.
Yeah.
Of I think probably in the last 15 years, I've probably had between 12 to 16 friends or friends of people that I know quite well die in avalanches or from crashing or from, just being stuff like that, just being living the game.
Well, that's, extreme sports and action sports. Have you come close to avalanche yourself?
I've been buried up to my waist, but nothing... touch wood, nothing.
Maybe tell people, what's it feel like, mate, when that surrounds you? I heard it's like concrete, is it?
When you get caught in an avalanche, it's a pretty interesting experience. It's kind of like moving concrete. It depends on the snow. I've never had a really traumatic experience. I've dug people out before from avalanches. I've seen people almost die. I've seen people be resuscitated.
Wow.
I've seen someone die in front of me from trauma in a competition, which was pretty gnarly. But avalanches, they're a really, really crazy part of the sport. And I've done my Avi 1 and my Avi 2 certificate, which is like basically where you learn about snow science and you learn how to dig roche pits and about how to do smear tests and all this kind of stuff. And there's basically like when you go out in the morning, you either look on the internet or you look on the patrol hut and you look at the avalanche danger out of 5. There's from moderate all the way through to extreme. The average avalanche would happen on a slope between 35 and say 43 degrees.
Yeah.
Because once it's over 43 degrees, it kind of would slide naturally.
Sure.
But we'll, normally if we're going to go out filming, we'll dig a pit, we'll assess the situation, whether we're in the backcountry or we're out sledding or depending where we are in the world. Dig a pit, have conversations, talking about it always. Snow science is a fascinating game, and I really don't know that much about it. I'm still learning a lot. I have friends that have been mountain guides, friends of my dad's that have been mountain guides for 30 years, and they still say that they don't know anything. It's very hard to estimate what the snow's going to do before it does. You've got to be really, really careful. that one moment of glory can cost you your life.
Isn't that true?
And it happens a lot. You know, a lot of people die every year from avalanches and from pushing the sport and doing stuff like that. But avalanches are definitely something that is dangerous. I've had my friends get buried in front of me. I've dug my friends out up to like a neck level. I've never really had a super traumatic experience, but I've heard a lot of really crazy stories.
Where's a place that you've skied and you've thought, oh, I'm not really sure if my skill level's at this level? And you obviously you got to go. All the guys are there. So where's that been?
The gnarliest spot I've ever been on is there's a face in Verbier called the Bec de Ross, and it's where they have the World Tour Finals, like the new Super Tour World Tour Finals, and it's a massive, like probably like a 3,500 to 4,000 vertical foot wall of just rock and ice and snow, and you climb up from the back of Mont Fort in Verbier, and you climb up this ridge line up to the top, and both sides it's like thousands of meters fall, like. And you walk up this long ridge line for about, it just seems forever. It's probably about an hour.
Is anyone talking or are you just quiet? You're in your own zone?
Yeah, you're kind of like in your own zone because you're on a ridge line just walking up in a line of people.
Yep. Depends
if you're breaking trail or not.
Sure.
And, fall in your die zones. It's a pretty gnarly sport. And when you get, I remember going up to the top of the Beck for the first time and walking up. I can't remember what the name of the ridge line is, but I remember walking up to the top and clipping in and just going, like, I shouldn't be here. This is just too gnarly for me.
Yep.
And I skied it, and I probably had the ability to do it, but it's a lot of the stuff I think with action sports is a lot of it's in your brain. Like it's majorly mental. If you can envision yourself doing something, then most of the time you can do it. But overcoming fear is half the battle, and it's half the fun of it, or probably the most amount of fun. If you see something you don't think you can do it, and then you envision it, and then you go out and you do it, and you come macking out of a big straight line, going like 65, 70 k's an hour, just macking. And there's like all your homies down the bottom just screaming, clipping their poles together, just you. It's like and you look back up at your line. You look back up at your line, and it's just like that's why I ski. That's the whole reason why I ski. And like competitions and filming and photos, that's fun. But
it's a byproduct, isn't it?
It's a byproduct, and it's the true nature of awesomeness is those moments with your friends, whether you're surfing or riding dirt bikes or whatever, and you're out in the mountains or in the ocean, and you're just enjoying what God or Buddha or Allah or whoever created, and it's that feeling that you get and that camaraderie that you build with your friends by experiencing gnarly experiences, whether it's traumatic or glory, are what tie you together. And, truly my best friends in the world are the ones that I ski and snowboard with. And I've just had crazy experiences with them. And just, you can't, when everyone's screaming and you feel that, like, just that feeling of amazement at the end of a day, and you have a cold beer, it's the most satisfying thing in the world. And like, the thing about skiing and snowboarding that is so amazing for me is like, I don't know if you remember when you're a little kid, when it's like Christmas time and you've got that that tingling in your bones because Santa's coming.
That's it.
I still get that to this day every time it's snowing.
Yep.
And like you wake up in the morning and all my friends, they're all wild partiers. They're all wild.
Yep.
But if it snows 2 feet, 3 feet in the morning, everyone, no matter who they're in bed with a girl or they're still hungover, still drunk, whatever. If it's game day, no matter what, everybody's up, avalanche beacons, probes, shovel, check, breakfast, to the mountain.
Even if you're seedy, you're still there.
Even you're seedy, and there's like 3 feet of snow outside, and everybody's like, and you get on the tram, or in the gondola, like you're waiting in the lineup. We all normally get there like an hour early. Like go grab a coffee, maybe meet up with the photographer or the filmer and plan what we're going to do for the day. But that feeling, especially in American ski resorts, because there's just a lot more hardcore. Verbier's kind of got it. It's kind of a dying art, the ski bum, because it's just kind of getting so expensive to do. But that feeling that you get in the morning and you wake up and there's that much snow and everybody, all these people come, they just get up and they share that moment where it's just like amazement, and it's incredible feeling, and you can't. And then you go up on the hill, and you go ski pow or you go snowboard.
But it's so quiet too, mate.
Oh, it's amazing.
Isn't it quiet up there?
Just when you're out, and it's indescribable how that amazing feeling, and to have that feeling as an older adult, and to have that consistently, like, that's what life's about for me, anyways. Personally, are those moments where there's so much going on in the universe around us. I've got so much other stuff that I'm doing: girls, business, life, parents, all that kind of stuff, all the BS of life. When you're truly in a moment where you don't think about anything else other than what you're doing right there, whether you're surfing and getting a barrel, or you're skydiving, or you're riding a motocross bike around a track and you're like hitting the whoops, or that moment of like pure simplicity in that exact, only thinking about exactly what you're doing, that's what life's about, in my opinion.
Mate, thank you so much for sharing. Let's talk about you taking that energy into your business. And about from between 2002 2006, you worked for your dad, Fusion Car Audio, mate.
Yeah.
Huge. When he's got that came out big. Tell us about that.
Well, back in the day, after my parents had all their Mexican restaurants, my dad had a pretty big car accident, and in America, and they ended up he couldn't work in the restaurant anymore. He couldn't cook or anything like that. So we ended up moving up here, up to the Gold Coast, and my dad had a friend that had a speaker box company, and his company went bankrupt, and my dad had to come in and work for him. My dad's a pretty affable, nice guy. He helps a lot of people out, and he came in and he helped this guy basically save his business, and pretty much saved him from going to jail. Because he was just in, a whole bunch of stuff.
Sure.
And anyways, he ended up going to the CES show, and he was looking for a company to import, and he met the guys from Fusion, which Fusion was a New Zealand company.
Yep.
He basically just negotiated a deal to be the importer into Australia. That started a pretty wild ride. My dad was pretty into motocross. He used to be like, an A-grade rider. His parents used to own the Wilberforce water ski ground. He won the bridge to bridge back in the day a couple of times in his category. Wow. So he's a pretty old, talented ski bum for many years, Yeah. So when he did that, my little brothers were starting to get into motocross. I was skiing and stuff, and he had an association with action sports. So he started to sponsor a lot of athletes. We sponsored the Krusty Tour for 3 years. We sponsored Robbie Madison. We sponsored Matt. My dad gave Matt Schubring some of the first cash to build that big foam pit that helped progress with motocross. Awesome. And he gave him like $5 or $10 back in the day. Yep. And that was a really interesting experience. I just used to do help with marketing, and then help at events like Auto Salon, and we used to sell aliens, Fusion aliens.
Mate, that's what I remember. It was unreal.
We sold thousands and thousands of those. It was amazing.
Was that part of the actual deal, or your dad brought him in as a marketing plan, or you did?
No, that was part of that was like Fusion's little character that they used to put out there. But my dad was the first guy to sell them. Yeah. And we used to sell them for $5 a pop. We used to make almost more money off selling the aliens than we used to, but if you equated it for amount of time, and
smart,
thousands and thousands. And then my dad also had a really close relationship with John O'Porter before he died. Yeah. That was really tragic. I was actually there that day on the sunny coast when he passed away. And so I remember John. We were at a auto salon in Canberra, and Jono came up. I think he was like 21 or something. And he had that old school. We were sponsored by Airtime, Daniel McKenzie from Airtime Clothing back in the day. Yep. He came up to my dad and started talking to him, and my dad's like, "You're a pretty nice guy." He was like, it would have been interesting to see where Jono would have gone. And then he ended up. My dad ended up sponsoring him and decked out his big van, his big Mercedes Sprinter, which my dad ended up actually buying and turning into my little brother's motocross team van. What a lovely guy that guy was. One of the nicest people I've ever met, actually. And I only met him a few times. But that was interesting. It got had a lot of interesting experiences on the Krusty Tour, a lot of craziness with Robbie Madison. And
what do you remember of Robbie?
One time Robbie broke his arm on the Krusty Tour, and he didn't really have a drinking buddy. And I was only I was about 4 years older than me, maybe 5 years, not that much older than me. And we ended up partying a whole bunch together. And Robbie's a lovely guy. His wife, Amy's a really nice woman. Robbie's a boss. He's a boss of life. And I have the utmost respect for that guy. Always, every time I see him now, he comes up and he shakes my hand and he's like, "How's your parents going?" Like, he remembers that I ski. He's just He's just a lovely, lovely guy.
Yeah.
And the stuff that he's done. I knew that he'd go far in the world. When I was young, I was like I met a lot of people back in the day, and I remember, Brian Deegan and all those guys. They weren't very nice, and Seth Enslow was a pretty cool dude. But I always remember, out of all of the characters that I met through the Krusty tours, Robbie always had a head on his shoulders to be able to achieve grand things.
Yep.
He has the ability to be able to foresee things, and then the ability and the tenacity to go get that done.
So what did you think about Pipe Dream when you saw that? Blow you away?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to see what he's done. That was like, I never would have thought that was possible. And he does things that are out of the box, Like, I remember seeing him on the world record night. He broke the world record on 125. He broke the world record on a 250 for longest distance jump. And then he broke the world record for the biggest trick. Now,
Queensland Raceway.
Queensland Raceway. That was a long time ago. Yeah. But basically, I remember seeing Larry Linkogel and Seth Enslow jump a little bit bigger than him because they had the bigger bikes. But Robbie, there was a big sequence in one of the old dirt actions, and he does, I think it was a 253-foot Superman seat grab. And if you watch it, the trick is perfectly executed, even though it's over that massive jump. And he hits it, he pops, he sets his trick, he grabs, and he holds it for probably 20 frames, and he held it for at least 6 or 7 frames, fully tweaked out.
Yeah.
And the thing that blew my mind about Robbie was that he was so comfortable when he was pushing his limits. And
well said.
Guys and I've noticed that I've got a few other friends that are, big pro surfers or skaters or motocross guys or, base jumpers. And there's only a very few people have that Laird Hamilton kind of, they stare death in the eyes, and it doesn't really faze them. And Robbie kind of has that about him. And he, I remember seeing Larry Linkogel and Seth, and they really had to push themselves to jump that. They had to kind of convince themselves that they could do it. Whereas Robbie, it just kind of looked like he was just doing his natural thing.
He was so comfortable, wasn't he?
Yeah. And it's quite mind-boggling to me that he has that ability. But, out of anybody that I know, and I don't see him very often anymore, but very well composed character, lovely, affable guy, always gives everybody the time of day, and just a boss of life. He's killing it, from the James Bond stuff to the jumping off the Arc de Triomphe with that step down, that step up, step down was just so gnarly.
Tell us that story you told me before about the webbing of his fingers.
Well, when he did the step off, which was I think it was 120 feet, maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But he actually ripped the webbing in his hand. And I remember watching it on TV and watching the interview afterwards. The amount of pain that would have caused him would have just been astronomical. And he's just there waving to the cameras, hugging his wife, and he didn't even faze him. And that blows my mind. And I saw that he would achieve great things when I was young. I was around him a little bit. But the fact that he's a modern-day Evel Knievel, and he's a really great guy. He's giving back to the sport, and the fact is that he's just a boss of life. He sees something. He's not really easily influenced by other people. He has a vision, and he goes out and he has the tenacity to do it and to achieve it. And in this world, that's pretty rare.
Mate, well said. Let's talk about your entrepreneurial spirit. Ballin On A Budget.
Yeah.
Just seen that since 2012. It's growing with heaps of momentum. What was the reason for that?
Well, basically what happened was I started a clothing company when I was young called Ultimatum back in the day. Was always into streetwear. I was into, I skated a little bit, and I always wanted to have a really cool brand. And I had that small little clothing company, and then I started a small little magazine called Booyah. And then I ended up...
What was that though?
That was just an online magazine, kind of action sporty kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then
you saw voids in the market, obviously, and just heading towards that?
Yeah, kind of. I just kind of wanted an outlet I didn't think that there was anything. I remember the old Krusty mags, and I always thought it was everything. Most of the action sports stuff was kind of cheesy, and not done in a way that was when they did interviews, they just asked the same cheesy questions, and it's just boring. I always wanted to create something that I would want to read, or create a brand where I wanted to wear it. And basically, so what happened was I met this photographer friend who I'm actually working with now, named Dominic Munch, and another one of my friends, and we ended up starting a men's magazine together. That was a pretty wild ride. We got to, I think, about 15,000 distribution, and we were doing it was a quarterly magazine. It was called Apollo, and I was the deputy editor for that with another friend of mine who was the editor and my other photographer friend. And so that was a really interesting ride. We went to the Playboy mansion a couple of times. I did interviews with Snoop Dogg and
backtrack. Playboy mansion. What happened?
Wildness. What
Can't
goes
talk?
on? I can talk if you want. I have a photo of mini-me underneath the table, passed out with little Nikes on, which is pretty funny. Pretty wild. I made out with Miss September. Got really drunk and made friends with the bartender. Lost everybody. Ended up having no money. Basically,
it's almost a movie there, isn't it?
Oh man, I could write several screenplays for a movie, but I'll wait till a couple more things happen. But basically, so Apollo was really interesting. We were in every major news agency in the country. We're doing, I think at the peak we were doing 15,000 distribution between a private little crew of us, and it was 3 of us, and then a couple other people that worked with us, and then a few other like just younger or interns and people that we worked with. And that was a really interesting experience because magazines kind of teach you about marketing, they teach you about sales, they teach you about deadlines, they teach you about writing emails and selling advertising.
Flat plans.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience. It was extremely rewarding. I remember walking into a news agency in Melbourne. I was down there for a conference on street culture, streetwear and hip-hop kind of stuff, like for Acclaim magazine. And I remember walking into a news agency on Chapel Street and seeing Apollo next to FHM and next to Zoo and next to GQ. And we were more like a high-end kind of magazine. That was like kind of the vibe that my friend was going for. And we had one article that was written by the guy who wrote Jimi Hendrix autobiography. Mm-hmm. We had articles on Hugh Hefner and his contribution to the free speech movement of America and changing the sexuality of the 50s and changing the sexuality as what people thought about sex in America. We had interviews with guys like the Mythbusters guys, and it was pretty interesting. It was a very interesting experience. I got to interview Snoop Dogg. I got to interview heaps of action sports athletes and heaps of just celebrities and weird stuff. We had some wild parties, and that was a really interesting time. I learnt a lot from my friend who was the editor. He taught me about tenacity and about having a vision and then creating it. I can't thank that guy enough. He opened a lot of doors for me.
Well, here's your chance.
And then I can't name names. Long story.
Okay.
Complicated. Technical.
Sure.
Because it was a men's magazine.
Sure.
And then so basically after that, we kind of had a falling out, like personal stuff, girls and all that kind of jazz. Mm-hmm. Not really my behalf, but
yeah,
sometimes relationships, people get what they want out of them, and then they go do their thing, and we kind of went and did ours. And I started Ballin On A Budget on the side, just as like a little web blog, kind of like the Chive or what Shock Mansion kind of does. I always kind of liked Shock Mansion and the Chive, and kind of like Zoo. I think if Shock Mansion was Hype Beast, we're like a High Snobiety, a little bit more curated, a little bit more high-end stuff, action sports, girls, entertaining videos,
yep.
Street culture, like, fashion, street fashion, sneakers, a little bit of, some other illicit substances that I won't elaborate on. And basically I started the blog in 2012. And slowly it's been gaining momentum. I post about 6 to 8 times a day. We're starting a clothing line around that. We're doing collaborations with other brands. And basically what we're doing is we're trying to become curators of cool.
Right.
Basically, so what we'll do is we'll do a collaboration with a brand, and then we will we'll stock that collaboration on which we've designed, and we'll put it on our online store. And then we'll curate 5 to 7 items that we like from that company's line, and then we'll stock those on our website. And so basically that way we're kind of curating. We're basically curators of cool.
So who's your market?
Our market's probably the 14 to 33-year-old male who's into action sports. And there was a gentleman that I interviewed. His name is Greg Selko, and he runs karmaloop.com. Now, karmaloop.com is the world's biggest online retailer of streetwear. They have an annual turnover of about $275 million. And he calls it verge culture. And basically it's like the verging of fashion action sports, marijuana, music, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's into that. And I had another conversation with one of the marketing managers of Adidas from Germany, and he basically called that guy a wanker because he said basically that's just what people do, and putting a name to it is kind of pointless because people are into what they're into. Everybody likes music. Everybody likes, if you're a guy and you're straight, you like...
Especially when they're just blended into hip-hop so early in the piece.
Yeah, you like hot girls and you like what you like, And so we basically... We're pro-choice, isn't it? Yeah, pro-choice. So we're a daily entertainment blog, and we post basically like all the best stuff on the internet, and trying to bring you clothing that is functional and stylish, that you can kind of high-end streetwear mixed with a little bit of snowboard and ski kind of flair. Yeah, we'll see where it goes with that. We're in the process of starting a creative agency that's going to be associated indirectly with that, and basically we help produce and direct music videos and like creative campaigns for brands and stuff like that, more so orientated to the youth culture kind of demographic.
Are you trying to connect larger commercial businesses, Fortune 500 businesses, to cultural cool? Is that what you're trying to do now?
But basically that's what we're trying to become curators of culture, is basically how I would say that what my ideology about it is, because so many of these brands, they want to be associated with what's going on, hip-hop and action sports and, weed and women and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the time it's done in a really cheesy way, and kids are getting smarter. Everybody's on Instagram. Everyone's on Snapchat. Everyone's reading all the blogs. Kids these days are a lot more educated than what a kid was 15 years ago. So they're all these old marketing guys that are like 50 years old, and they think they know what's up. They don't. They really don't. And they think that they try to spoon feed people this BS of what they need and what they want. But it needs to be done. People are intelligent. People want to have stuff presented to them, but there's a way of doing it and curating it in a way that's like entertaining as well as, you're getting a product that we don't want to do work with people that we don't like. Yeah. Like, we want to help people that have services that are going to make your life better, and we want to help them get in contact and to kind of put their word out in a way that's in an authentic way. Yeah, exactly. That's the word I was looking for. And not in a cheesy way. And so many people for years, since the first days of the X Games, when there was extreme bungee jumping and that whole Mountain Dew era of extreme and and now it's curated better. The companies like Red Bull and stuff do it well, but a lot of other companies, a lot of the stuff out there is just really cheesy, and it never really resonated with me. And
you could see through it, mate. That's why.
Yeah, because I was around a lot of the people that were interviewing, and I was very privileged to be around that and to actually know what was up. So I'd like to help take that to the world and help people have a voice and help people have a platform to be able to expose themselves and what they do, and link companies with projects and people that are actually congruent with the culture, and that actually help build brands that in the right way. And at the end of the day, if it's done properly and it's curated well, everybody's making money, everybody's happy, the culture's growing. New kids are getting exposed to things that are going to make them happy and and give them confidence and meet new people and break down social barriers and all that kind of jazz. And it's good for the culture. If there's enough of a pie for everybody to eat off it, if it's done in the right way, if it's curated in the right way, and it's put out in the right way, everybody wins. The culture progresses, the pie gets bigger, and everybody eats and everybody's happy. No one's ripping each other off. There's no there's a way of doing business where everybody can be happy.
Well, if you're getting up to 1.4 million page views per month, if I was an advertiser, I'd want to be on your site, right? Because that's where the eyeballs are.
Yeah.
So how does a business get in contact with you to come on Ballin On A Budget if they believe in what your intent is?
Yep.
What would you suggest they do?
The best thing would be to go to our website, which is www.ballinonabudget.tv, and then look through the links, and there's a contact us page. Creative agency should be up in the next few weeks, and the agency is called People Like Us, and basically it's going to be a creative collective We're still working out details, and we'll have a whole bunch of people underneath our banner, graphic designers and musicians and producers. And basically, I'm trying to build a platform for people to be able to do what they do in a really good way and curate cool in a way that's in an authentic way without being cheesy and trying to rip people off and trying to take from the culture. I want to give back to the culture that's given me so much.
Oh, absolutely.
And all of these cultures are all fusing together. Hip hop, music, action sports, all of it is all coming together. Everybody skates, everybody surfs, everybody listens to hip hop, everybody listens to dance music. It's all the same. It's just being young and having fun, you know.
Self-expressive.
And yeah, self-expression is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's that many platforms out there that exist that are doing it in the right way. Maybe that's a little bit arrogant to say that, but...
Well, what's your take on some of these larger brands like Billabong and Rip Curl that have had a softening in trade over the last 3 years? What's your take on what's happened, mate?
Well, what's happened is like a kid's not going to wear what his 45-year-old tradie father wears. So Billabong, you know, they kind of lost the 8 ball. You know, they didn't resonate with the youth culture. They weren't cool anymore. And you know, the one example of someone that's changed action sports in a major way is the guy named what's his name again? It's Sam McIntosh, the guy who started Stab magazine.
Okay.
Now, Stab magazine, I saw him speak at Semi Permanent, I think 2 years ago with Taj Burrow. And anyways, he was talking about, he started with Derek Riley. I think he was like an old school writer for tracks as well. And anyways, he was, Sam McIntosh, basically, he started Stab. He used to work for Tracks and Waves. And he saw this like hole in the market, basically, where he wanted, like, you know, kids, they're more hipsterish now. They're more into art. They're more into fashion. And he wanted to take surfing in that direction. And these old school surfers, they're like all macho and all like, you know, like beat people up because they get dropped in on and just that old school, you know, mentality. Well, that's not really things progress, you know, and people get stuck in what they do and they think they know better. I don't know better than anyone. I'm always down to learn new things. And, you know, just because I don't like certain fashion things that younger kids like, who am I to say what's cool and what's not cool?
That's right.
You can curate what you like, but whether it's digested or not, that's up to the consumer, you know? And basically, so this guy, he started Stab and he, you know, pretty much, he created a culture, you know, that whole offends, you know, the Volcom did it really well. You know, now Ruka's massive. But basically Stab, he kind of combined fashion and music and art and surfing together in a really, really cool form. And everyone, when he started it, said he was crazy.
Yeah, they did.
And now it is if you go on the Stab website and you look at the interaction of people on their website, it's phenomenal. Like I surf the internet 2-3 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I'm on Hypebeast, I'm on all the Complex for music, I'm on, you know, all sorts of websites. And shock, man, what's it called? On Stab, sometimes they'll get 200 comments, 300 comments on something. And he's not really created a culture, but he's created
a platform
that people want. And
well, the content's good and they're engaging it.
Yeah, and it's done in a really good way. He basically proved all these naysayers and all these people that thought they knew better wrong. And and it's now amazing. He's making heaps of money.
He was unlike anything else. Yeah. Unrealistic, and so he's just gone on to do great things.
Yeah, and these new brands, like I think that like Billabong. I never wore Billabong. It never resonated with me. But now, like, I think the Billabong Essentials range does okay. The small branding, that whole that whole era of like neon and big logos and stuff, like that's late 90s stuff.
So if they came to you and said, "Look, we love your platform. We need a bit of a change in our charter," would you take them on? Would you have a plan for them? Do you think, or do you say, "Listen, guys, love what you did, but I'm different"? To be honest with you, I'm kind of more into at the moment. Is more working with smaller brands and like helping them to grow. I wouldn't be. I don't know. I kind of would feel like a bit of a sellout if I talked
smack about a brand like that and then went and worked with them. I'm not really the type of person, well, I try not to be.
Yeah.
Maybe others would disagree. I try not to be the person that would say one thing and then do another thing just to be able to make money.
Yep.
So you know, a brand that I'd like to work with would be someone like Ruka. Ruka's done a lot of amazing stuff for surfing and skateboarding and for art, and they basically have really cool cuts. They design really cool stuff that people want to wear. They have really cool art shows. They sponsor artists. They sponsor alternate kind of weird surfers and weird skaters that have kind of got a personality, and that's what people want. You know, there's always going to be the Kelly Slaters of the world, but then there's going to be guys like, you know, Ace Buchanan or like Dion Argus who rides for Globe. You know, like Globe's a brand it's a pretty cool brand. It's kind of done the crossover between things change, things progress. You know, people want art, people want cool cuts. They want to be different at the same time as, you know, I don't know. Would I work with a brand like Billabong? Oh, no, probably not. It doesn't really resonate with me, to be honest with you. Another brand that did well through it all was, and one of the only brands that really didn't. I guess they ended up selling out because they ended up selling out for, I think, $600 million was Volcom. But kids today will still wear Volcom. Most kids won't wear Billabong. Most kids won't wear Quicksilver. Quicksilver America just went bankrupt. You know, that just shows that if you rest on your laurels, then you're not going to... The things have changed in the last 10 years. Online retail, the way that we digest media has changed. There's so much more out there now. They're like, you can't be a slow-moving dinosaur. The same thing happened in skateboarding when Pal Peralta and stuff died out because of the World Industries attack and all these new companies that came up, you know? You have to have agility. You have to be able to change up and
pivot.
And you know, those brands, they do their thing, and I respect that. But for us, we're just doing our own thing, and I'd rather, you know, like, who knows what the sky's the limit for what we want to do, but we want to work with brands that are congruent with our culture, that are congruent with our vibe of what we want to do. I guess that's kind of what we want to do.
Well said. Okay, moving into 2020, only 5 years away. What's your plans?
My plans are to have hopefully have a pretty big streetwear brand. Action sports brand would probably be, if you fuse Neff with Ruka, with a little bit of Supreme flair to it, that would be a really kind of weird little mix.
Yep.
Hopefully have a creative agency with a distribution network, kind of similar to what Complex has done, but on a more multi-platform arrangement, like action sports, weed culture, music, entertainment on a massive level. We have a whole ideology of, or a whole plan of action of what we want to achieve with that. And basically, you know, try and help the culture get bigger and help create platforms for people to expose themselves and make money off what they do. You know, there's a lot of skiers and snowboarders out there that are doing just are into urban. They just slide rails and that's what they're into. But in skiing and stuff, there's not a lot of money for them. But even though that those people, they sell more skis than the guy who just won X Games, because they're on newschoolers.com. They're putting edits out. The hardcore skier kid,
yep,
he watches their stuff. He doesn't watch Nick Groper doing triples. He watches, you know, Clayton Villa or Sean Jordan,
yep,
with their web series, and things are changing.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's still a market for everybody.
Yep.
But I think that the pie needs to be spread around a little bit more. And I think that this old school mentality of slapping a logo on someone that gets TV coverage at X Games for like 5 seconds, and the fact that people think that equates to more dollars because they put their sticker on that one athlete who just got on the podium at X Games, like that's not my thing.
Yeah.
That's not really congruent with the culture. There's guys like Kelly Slater. There's underground surfers that have their own blogs, and that's what's so good about Stab, is that they expose all those kind of different mediums, and they still like the World Surfing League, as they call it now.
Yep.
And they still are into the free surfer, and that kind of stuff that's the future. There's many ways. People are into different stuff. You know, some people want to be competitive and and want to do triples on skis or on a snowboard. Some people want to go slide rails in little tight pants and do little stuff like Scott Stevens does, like innovative, fun kind of tricks that are like mini jib kind of stuff. But there's a massive market and different strokes for different folks, you know?
Yeah.
So basically we want to provide a platform for people to be able to get their brands out there and do it in a way that's congruent with the culture.
Mate, thank you so much. Just give a plug out to where people can find you again.
If you want to check us out on our internet site, which is updated daily with all the internet's best content at www.ballinonabudget.tv. On Instagram, you can find us at ballinonabudget420. And basically that's it.
Will Stolk, thanks very much for your time. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, mate. Thank you.